Welcome to a presentation, Why Sales Managers Fail. During this presentation, you're going to learn the typical pitfalls, but more importantly, what sales managers can do to alleviate typical mistakes made when driving and developing their sales team. During this presentation, we're going to discuss very specific coaching approaches you can utilize to drive bottom line results. Now, the following 7 sales manager mistakes will be discussed in great detail. Now, as we present this material, this is not meant to make sales managers feel bad or depict only the things they do wrong. If anything, today's sales leaders are burdened with more reporting requirements, more staffing requirements, more management requirements, and quite frankly, many sales managers today are still selling as more leaders are wearing more hats than they ever have, probably more than anything due to the Great Recession. So as we go through each of these 7 areas, keep in mind, I'd like you to keep an open mind as to what you can utilize from this presentation to help you successfully drive better performance with your sales team. Now, as I stated in the earlier slide, I don't intend to be negative, but let me just share with you an observation I have of a lot of sales managers or sales leaders. There's too much negative management. And what I mean by that is that when you're managing a team of salespeople, and we have reporting requirements, and the VP of sales or the CEO or the president of the company is asking for information, we typically try to manage by what? Results, reports. And very often what we do is we're trained to look for what? What's wrong? And let me give you a rough example. I'm going to have you just think outside of your body. A sales leader goes out to the cubicles and asks an employee, Joanne, when you get off that phone, I'd like you to come in my office right away. What's Joanne's first response or thought as to what's going to be discussed? It's typically, what did I do wrong? Rarely are people brought in because of the good things they do. And so what I mean by too much negative management isn't that sales leaders by nature are negative people, because they're not. But we are conditioned to do what? Point out the negative things. Now, one of the things I would encourage you to do, and it's a very, very simple task, and what it does is it really accomplishes the earlier slide's core objective. When you have somebody who's performing at a high level, use your staff meeting to look at that person and say, John, share with the group why you feel like you're having success. What are the specific things that you're doing that you could share with the group? Now, that seems simple, doesn't it? But the fact of the matter, what you're doing is you're sending a message to the rest of the people in the room. Here's what you need to aspire to, and I will publicly recognize you as well. Number 2, you're also doing what we call peer-to-peer coaching. You're having someone share what they actually do. Now, you notice the question I asked. What are you doing specifically to create the success you've been having lately? Specifically. Meaning that person's going to be sharing or disseminating some information of value to the rest of the people in the room. That recognition becomes extremely powerful if you do it. For your weekly or biweekly or monthly staff meetings, that is a really powerful way to continue to fuel people's minds. Now, one of the biggest things that I see in managing salespeople is what I call the forecast flaw. Very often we end up managing our people by the numbers of what's in their pipeline, what their forecast shows us. And there's a great white paper out there by a company called CSO Insights, and one of the founders, Jim Dickey, who I've talked to, and many of his research papers shows that a large percentage of salespeople never hit their forecast. So there's always something that we have to do, and that is get underneath the hood of the car. The hood is the forecast. There's something underneath that forecast. And what do we typically do as salespeople, and present company included? I have a business partner. I'll typically tell them, oh yeah, I think it's going to close. Because what do? We talk ourselves into the good things to avoid the painful things. So when you're having a forecast, 2 things I would advise you to do. 1, make it comfortable for them to be honest so you can deal with reality. John, I'd like to go through your forecast with you. And here's what I'd love from you, John. I want absolute honesty. Number 2, I'm going to ask you a series of questions not to make you feel uncomfortable, but I'm going to ask you a series of questions so we can accurately present our forecast to upper level management? And those questions, I'll give you a rating question. On a scale of 1 to 5, John, 5, the Hagen Company is going to close in the next 30 days, and you'd bet your kids' lives on it. 3, you're really not sure, but you feel good about it. 1, you really don't know enough to be confident with even saying when it will close. So where do you think the Hagen Company would be based on that rating scale? And that question gets them to mentally make that commitment. So don't fall victim to getting their forecast and putting it into your reporting and delivering it to upper level management only to come back and re-engineer the forecast, which you might end up doing anyways. But the more accurate, the more you're going to be able to deal with your people. The forecast becomes a tool to find out, why is Tim struggling getting from the pipeline to the closing stage? Why does John have 80% of his deals stop at the closing stage? The forecast is a great tool to depict performance challenges. Now, one of the things that's really picking up steam in the industry today is coaching. It used to be that nice, touchy, fluffy, good feeling, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had time to coach. But if the Great Recession taught us anything, is that we need to get more out of our people than ever. And we're not given all the resources we used to be given. And I'm going to make a really direct, strong comment to you. At the end of the year, there's one person doing that salesperson's evaluation. It's not the HR department. It's not Tim Hagen, the outside training consultant. It's you, the manager. You have to make the time for coaching. Now, we teach a methodology called progress coaching, where we teach 8 different ways to coach salespeople, many of which you don't even have to physically be present. Now, that's not a sales pitch. What I'm sharing with you is coaching doesn't have to be this time-intensive, always delivered in a one-on-one fashion with all of your employees. Now, you notice in a prior slide I mentioned something called peer-to-peer coaching. It's a very powerful form of coaching. Make the time for coaching, because you know what? People don't arbitrarily get better. Now, one of the typical reactions that we have as sales leaders, because often sales leaders or managers are promoted from within or had a prior sales job. What we typically do is, oh, no, here's the way I used to do that. And let me just be really upfront and frank with you. When sales leaders constantly lead with, here's how I did it, the transfer of the ownership of getting better at that area of performance or skill or sales endeavor, if you will, gets transferred to the sales leader. I just did what my boss told me to do. Didn't work out. We didn't close the deal. So the point being, when you're wanting to gravitate to, here's how I did it, stop yourself and ask a really good coaching question, such as, John, if I wasn't here right now, what are the 2 things that immediately come to your mind that you would do to successfully close this deal, and how could I help you? You're going to learn a lot by asking that question. But if you always gravitate to the way you did it, they're never going to own what they need to learn or get better at. Now, one of the things that I think we're all guilty of is having too many sales meetings. Now, let me re-emphasize what I mean by too many sales meetings. When we're getting together and we're talking about forecasts and we don't have it really well thought out or planned, we gravitate to, come on everybody, we're going to hit our numbers, right? I mean, does anyone really feel comfortable standing up saying, no, Bob, I'm going to be at about 50% of quota. I am really struggling with price objections. We know that doesn't occur. So instead of just having sales meetings, have sales coaching sessions. Everybody, I want you to pair up in groups of 2. And what I'd like you to do is I'm going to present a case study that one of us in this room is currently dealing with. And I want everybody in this room to take 10, 12 minutes and really work on that. Come up with 3 questions, 2 approaches, and 1 thing that somebody needs to be aware of to create success based on the case study I'm about to present to you. And what you've accomplished is you've broken up the monotony of the typical sales meeting. You've gotten them engaged, but more importantly, we're working on someone's actual real-world sales challenge. It's extremely powerful. I've got to tell you, probably one of the things I've noticed more than anything through my years, and I've been doing coaching and training for the past 22 years, and I will share across industries, while we all think our industries are unique, let me give you a common theme that I've seen. And that's the assumption how good our people are. Oh, I've got a pretty experienced group of people, Tim. They don't really need training. But also, they don't like to role play. That's always a red flag to me. And I was on a sales call years ago for a technology company, and the gentleman I was traveling with was number 2 out of about 17 or 18 salespeople, selling a very high-end type of technology associated with Oracle. And during our meeting with a client, I was watching him in action. And I have to tell you, he was not only a poor salesperson, he was arrogant on top of it. He didn't take notes. He asked close-ended questions. He pigeonholed himself to the point where the customer basically ended the meeting within about 15 minutes. And he walked out and convinced himself it wasn't his fault. Another client of mine who was in the science industry, if you will, and he was number 1 in the company, and just told me, he goes, look, I've been doing this 30 years, Tim. I don't need to role play. I don't need coaching. And what happened around him over the next 12 to 18 months is some of the younger generation kind of caught up to him and surpassed him. He went from number 1 to number 11 out of about 45 salespeople inside of 15 months. By the way, his numbers didn't go down. Everybody else's rose because they got better. So don't make assumptions because somebody's hitting their numbers that they're a really good salesperson. And on the flip side, don't make an assumption because somebody's numbers aren't at 100% of quota that they aren't or don't have the opportunity to become a really good salesperson. So how can we help you? First of all, we have developed a training system for sales leaders called the Sales Progress Coaching System. And we have implemented it with professional sports teams, publicly traded companies, large manufacturers, small to mid-sized technology companies. And there's one thing that we know across all industries, that if the manager is not coaching their salespeople's performance and skill sets do not arbitrarily get better. So what we teach is a variety of very specific coaching methods and techniques, many of which will actually save you time. So let us know if we can help you. I want to thank you for going through this presentation, and as you can see, our website, salesprogress.com, we have a resource tab up there where we have a couple different sections for free presentations and a blog, and it's 100% educational that I hope you thought this presentation was. So if you have any questions about us or if you'd like to just research some information, we don't get you in a headlock. We don't attack you when you download a white paper or some free presentation. But at some point, if we would like to have a conversation, let us know. And we'd love to chat with you about how we basically build up coaching programs to increase the bottom line as well as increase the ability of the people who drive the bottom line. Thanks for your time.